all or part of this afternoon's proceedings are going to be live streamed with the voice-only transmission. Those with electronic devices may use them to report what they have heard in the hearing room, but only 10 minutes after the event which they're describing has elapsed. Such devices may not be used for recording.
Thank you. HM1, can you see and hear me?
Yes, thank you.
I want to move now to ask you about an individual who has given a witness statement to the inquiry since you were last giving evidence in January, and who the inquiry has assigned the cipher Gretchen. You have seen a statement provided by that individual, have you?
I have, yes.
And you're aware who Gretchen really is and their real identity?
Yes.
Could we have on the screen that witness statement? I want to ask you about some of its contents, please. It's UCPI 037534. And we see it's dated the 7th of February of this year. I'm going to skip the introductory remarks and go, please, to, thank you, section 2. Can we focus in on paragraphs 2.1 and 2.2? Gretchen states that she met Matt, that's a reference to Matt Rayner, around 1994 through London Animal Action. Do you recall meeting Gretchen in those circumstances?
Yes.
And at around that time?
Yes.
She states that she was active in London Animal Action. Is that your recollection?
Yes.
And that she saw you regularly at meetings and protests. Again, does that accord with your recollection?
Yes.
Paragraph 2.2, she mentions in particular protests outside the Leyden Street slaughterhouse on Sundays once a month.
Yes, agree with that.
And she describes that the part you would play there would be shouting. Do you agree with that?
A bit of shouting, yeah, along the lines I've described.
And then you would all go to the pub afterwards. Again, to what extent does that accord with your recollection?
Well, sometimes, but not always. I know it's splitting hairs, but yes.
She describes you transporting them in your van to many places, including national demos. That seems to be consistent with what you've told the inquiry to date. Is that fair?
Yes.
And then paragraph 2.4, please. She describes you as being quite flirty with her. Were you flirty with Gretchen?
Absolutely not, no. No.
You'll recall that when Miss Fuller gave evidence, she described you also as flirty, and when I put that to you, you disagreed with that evidence, especially insofar as it suggested flirting with other people. Do you maintain that?
Absolutely, yeah.
Could we take the statement down for a moment, please, and put on the screen MPS 0245872, which is an intelligence report attributable to UHM1 dated the 24th of January of 1996. So it's your so it's in your supplemental Gretchen bundle at B3. HM1, this is a report about Gretchen, and under peculiars, you describe her as well-dressed and attractive. Did you find Gretchen to be well-dressed and attractive?
She was well-dressed, and I think even was pleased to sort of present herself as attractive. So I think that's accurate, yeah. It's not the same as saying I found her attractive.
Well, that was going to be my next question. Did you or did you not find her attractive?
No, but she did stand out in the way that she dressed, very smartly, very bubbly, effervescent, and was clearly took a lot of pride in her appearance.
If we take that down, please, and go back to her witness statement, UCPI 037534, paragraph 2.5, please. Page 2, at the bottom, She describes that at a London Animal Action meeting around 1995, when she would have been around 25 years old, you asked her out. Did you ask Gretchen out on a date?
No, I've never asked her out on a date or anywhere near.
Right. She goes on to describe, over the page please, paragraphs 2.7 and 2.8, that you picked her up in your van at her parents' house in North London. You drove her to Brighton. She recalls buying a t-shirt especially for the date with the words "Rage Against the Cage" on it. She recalls you asking lots of questions about what type of music she liked, what type of food she liked. She recalls you saying you were a strict vegan and asking her about her activism. Did you drive Gretchen in your van to Brighton from her parents' address in North London?
So I'm going to dispute the geography. So this is where it gets a bit confused, maybe on my part as well, but I don't specifically remember going to Brighton just with Gretchen and picking her up from her house. What I do remember is a different journey. I say, unless over the period of time I've got this completely wrong, because it was certainly someone. And I was fairly certain that in her interest in where I worked and what I did, I'd mention the type of journey that she said she wanted to be a part of, and this, which sounded quite ludicrous, of coming to see where I worked, but in the context of this regular run I did from starting off just south of London, coming back through London and going up to North Wales on regular delivery runs to the factory. So that was someone. I thought that was her. And as ludicrous as that sounds, because it's a deadly, deadly dull journey on motorways, it was, again, someone sort of, well, does he really work there? And because she was close to George, that sort of being part of that due diligence. I didn't really care whether it was or whether it wasn't. If you really do want to come, you can, but it's just going to be so dull. So that's where this story for me is in this particular geography, unless she doesn't recall that, which would be odd. Stroke is denying that. It doesn't make sense as to who else that would have been, because I do remember the picking up in the morning and dropping off late at night.
Right, so you're telling us, as I understand it, just to summarise, about a recollection of an occasion on which you drove Gretchen, or you took Gretchen along with you on a drive to North Wales. Is that right?
Specifically Shropshire. So had I not seen this Gretchen's statement, and the open question had been, have you ever gone for a trip during the day in which you travel with Gretchen, I would have gone for from memory, what I am now talking about. And so the Brighton thing just doesn't, I mean, we're only talking geography in a way at the moment. I'm not disputing that there was a day in which there was a journey with me and Gretchen, which involved picking her up at the beginning of the day and dropping her off at the end of the day. Not disputing that.
All right. So the question mark in your mind is over where you went on that journey.
Yes, and I say I mean, this is where it sort of is not even memorable. That certainly happened with someone in my trip to North Wales. Shropshire, wherever Oswestry is, that's the final destination. And I don't specifically remember Brighton in this context. I remember going to Brighton regularly with others. That's where I am on this recollection.
So you did go to Brighton with some regularity?
So Brighton was relatively frequent because it was close to Shoreham, which is where there was a regular live exports. Brighton itself was home to a lot of activity, as we've seen, conferences, demonstrations. So I just don't recall specifically as being portrayed here, a day out on a date. I mean, I've never been on a date with Gretchen, never sought one. And but yeah, if we just stick to the geography, that's why I'm starting this this answer.
All right. Just putting the geography to one side and sticking with the journey that you do remember taking with Gretchen, did you invite her on the journey?
Well, so my recollection was, and this is why it happened, it was her asking me about where I worked. I mean, to cut what must have been a fairly long series of conversations, well, can I come too one day? That would be fun. I don't know if you used the word fun. Well, why would you want to do that? It's a sort of, it's a motorway journey. It's a sort of 450, 500-mile round trip in a pretty uncomfortable van full of stuff in the back. Ultimately, the answer was, well, yes, okay. I thought it through, actually. Whoever this person was, I'd say, I think it was her, but it was this also part of, establishing just whether I really did work there. The only point in having that job was to use it in anger, as it were. And I was really doing that on a sort of fortnightly basis. So come if you really want.
So you thought it through in the sense of perhaps you were being tested or checked out. Did you think it through in any way in the sense that you were about to drive a young woman alone in your van on a long trip together, and what that situation presented to you?
Well, I mean, I actually thought it was going to be a very awkward day. It was such an odd thing to want to do, and I can understand had it really been, somewhere more exciting and a much shorter journey. But there was a sort of, yes, I would like to. Yes, I would like to. I must admit, I was not looking forward to it, but it seemed to me, if you really want to, then yes. But it's, that's my recollection.
What she sets out there in paragraph 2.8 in terms of the nature of the conversation in the van on the journey, does that ring bells with you from what you remember of your journey with Gretchen?
It was such a long day spent, sort of trying to consume these miles, and then it's quite a tiring day. Yes, I remember probably just small talk in a way, talking about things in common. A lot of the journey, especially the one on the way back, was, I think, either her asleep or just in silence or just probably regretting ever said yes to it.
What about asking her about her activism and how far she would go, and talking about the buzz of getting nicked and having your friends waiting for you at the police station, that nature of conversation?
I mean, look, I'm not to say that didn't come up somehow, but I don't remember it. I wasn't even particularly interested in it. It was more just sort of filling the time with idle chat. I don't recall specifically. It's more likely, I think, that I think she alludes to she did all the questions and I was pretty
Monosyllabic.
Uncommunicative with my monosyllabic answers. Yeah, I think I was a bit more expressive than that, but you get the gist.
If we look at what she says in paragraph 2.9, please. For now, just focusing on this, she recalls going to the George pub in Brighton with you, famous for its vegan burgers. Do you recall going to the George pub in Brighton with Gretchen?
No, I don't. I really don't.
Her account is that you kissed in the pub. What do you say to that?
Well, I mean, absolutely not. No, we didn't kiss anywhere, least of all in a pub. I mean, it's just, just didn't happen.
Why least of all in a pub?
Well, I don't know why I said that. I mean, it didn't happen because it hasn't happened. So whatever the geography is on this one, that just didn't happen.
And kissing again at the end of the date when you got back to London. Any kissing at the end of the journey that you do recall that you think involved Gretchen?
No, this whole thing from even sort of the beginning of the story, asking me out on a date is, I mean, it falls at the first hurdle here. I never got anywhere near, even in my sort of wanting to and suppressing it, asking Gretchen on a date. I do know, to be fair to her, she admits to being the centre of lots of male attention. So if I'm going to be charitable here, maybe I was just caught up in the sort of melee or confusion of somebody else doing it. But when she really thinks it's true, she will know absolutely if I never asked her on a date.
You said there I think in the context of wanting to and suppressing it, does it follow from that there was, in your mind, an extent to which you did want to take Gretchen on a date?
No, I actually said even had I hadn't even got to that stage. It wasn't even therefore there could have been an inkling of that in the eyes of others. And I've got to say, I don't recall anyone else ever commenting on this or having observed it or having offered support for any of this going on, or even interest between me. I mean, we were so very different, and our whole sort of style and demeanour and popularity elsewhere kept her well away from any interest I might have had, but didn't.
Well, her account isn't that this involved anybody else. It's that she was invited by you and went with you alone. Do you follow?
Well, I do, but I mean, I'll constantly come back very quickly to it. I never asked her out on a date or got anywhere near even the thought of it.
Your recollection of the journey you did take with Gretchen, is it possible that you're mistaken and that it was in fact to Brighton?
It's not. Let's say, had this Brighton story not come up, and the question was, did you ever spend a day together travelling in your van? This is what I would have come up with. So the Brighton one I just don't recall. And if it wasn't her, on this day I drove all the way to Shropshire and back, it was someone else. But either way, I can't say for certain. I was more certain of that before sort of reading about the fact we might have gone, in her mind, to Brighton together.
I suppose the question that I'm asking you is this: are you able, based on what you can recall, to rule out a journey with Gretchen in your van to Brighton?
Yes, just the two of us, yes. Yeah, and certainly to sort of categorically deny the description of events during that day.
She goes on to say, if we go please to paragraph 2.13 of her witness statement over the page. Thank you. That you continued to see each other at London Animal Action meetings and demos. She recalls you both being at Zwern's fur shop for a day of action against the fur trade when a window got broken. Do you recall that?
Vaguely. She was very present at all of these demonstrations, yes, absolutely.
An occasion on which she's suggesting she was bundled on by people in a citizen's arrest. Does that ring bells?
It does vaguely.
And then if we could just go back up, please, to 2.12, just above that. Sorry, just before we do that, I should have asked this. The action at Zwern's fur shop, is that likely to be the National Day of Action against the fur trade, where you were later arrested in St John's Wood? Or is that a different occasion? Are you able to say?
I'm not, but Zwern was a regular venue for demos. So, for a day of action against the fur trade. Could easily have been, yes. But can't say for certain without conferring the two dates.
And she puts that as having taken place after the journey in your van, in terms of the sequence of events. Does that match your recollection in terms of the sequence of events?
I don't have any recollection, regardless of the geography, on the timings.
2.12, Gretchen's evidence in her statement is that after you went on this trip together that she understood to be a date, that you asked her out again afterwards a few times. Did you ask her out again several times?
I didn't ask her once, never mind several times. This is, I mean, it's really, this is, I don't know where this is from, but it couldn't be further from the truth. I mean, on stuff far more serious than this, I've been absolutely, really quite sort of open and candid about. This is just, from the outset, incorrect.
Could we have a look, please, at the risk assessment document that we've looked at before, UCPI 037227? It's your B182B, sir. And we looked at this document last time you gave evidence HM1 in connection with Miss Fuller. Could we turn over the page, please, in this document? And we have unredacted a section at the bottom of this page, at the bottom of the page, of the risk assessment note. So to be clear, HM1, this is part of the inquiry process when you were spoken to by officers conducting a risk assessment in connection with your application for anonymity. Do you follow?
Yes.
And what they have recorded is a list of key associates, which included, if we look, please, zoom in particular on the page with 14 at the bottom. Yes, we can look at that text, thank you. Included Gretchen as a key associate.
Yes.
Did you tell the risk assessors that Gretchen was a key associate of yours?
I don't remember being a key associate, but was definitely part of the scene and a prominent on the circuit.
Is it likely that it was you who mentioned her real name when you spoke to the risk assessors?
Well, I'd imagine so. Yeah, I don't remember doing that specifically. I don't remember coming up specifically with that list of names, but yes, I guess so.
In a different document, if we could put that on the screen, MPS 0749632, this is also arising out of the risk assessment process, HM1, and we looked at this last time. Could we turn to section 2.17? Thank you. At the bottom there, and going over the page, this is the list of key associates recorded in another document from the risk assessment process. And just so that you can see, could we have the rest of the list from the second page on the screen, if possible, please? Is it possible to get fit the whole list on the screen down to number 16? I'd just like HM1 to be able to see the whole piece. Thank you. Thanks. All right, HM1, so you can see in this document the list of key associates does not appear to have included Gretchen, but did include Miss Fuller's name. So when you spoke to the risk assessor, I won't go through it again, you mentioned Miss Fuller as a key associate, not as someone with whom you'd had an intimate relationship. Were you likewise mentioning Gretchen as a key associate because you had in fact shared an intimate day with her, if not a relationship as such?
No, I couldn't really be further from the truth.
Why does she appear as a key associate? Are you able to assist?
No, but she was close to George, so there was that added element of sort of George's additional interest in who I was and what I was doing, and the closeness that they had being linked.
But that explains her closeness to George. What about her closeness to you?
Well, in terms of risk assessments, him, if you like, inverted commas, poisoning her as to what he thought of me, and therefore the need for her to be on the lookout, which is what I actually thought that trip could have been partly about, knowing about that association. So that's my explanation for that. But
Her the totality of her witness statement suggests that this, as she remembers it, a date that you took her on occurred sometime around the spring of 1995. If she's right about the date, that would have been shortly after you had broken up with Miss Fuller and made an attempt to rekindle, which was unsuccessful, wouldn't it?
well, timings wise, yes, that works.
Was there any sense in which, having lost the, if I can call it this, the shield or the assistance you gained from being in a relationship with Miss Fuller in terms of the stability of your cover, you were looking for another relationship in order to fulfil the same function?
No, absolutely not. And in terms of if I've got the sort of nuance of that question right, had that been the case, I don't think Gretchen would have been a robust candidate for that.
But she was another individual, another woman who was close to George and with whom a relationship might have assisted in allaying his suspicions. Is that fair?
Well, I mean, this is none of this got anywhere near even the sort of drawing board in my mind of anything remotely feasible.
But had it done, she would have been in a similar position to Miss Fuller in that sense.
No, I disagree with that. But it hadn't anyway.
Could we go back to her witness statement, please? Paragraph 2.14, page 4. It's UCPI 037534. Thank you. Gretchen says in her witness statement that she spent even more time with Christine Green, so HN26, than with you, and that she told Christine Green about her date with you. Did you have any conversations with Christine Green, HN26, about Gretchen?
No.
Did she ever approach you and ask about the status of your relationship with Gretchen?
No.
Paragraph 2.15 of the witness statement, please. Gretchen recalls going to your farewell do, so when you withdrew. Do you recall her being there?
Not specifically, but it's absolutely possible that she was, not contesting that.
Did you ever mention to your managers the prospect of, or the fact of, having taken Gretchen on a journey in your van?
Don't believe so.
Was it the sort of thing that you would have mentioned? Taking a long journey like that?
Yeah, could have done in passing. It was a bit of a non-event in my mind, and I say I would rather it hadn't have happened, because it was going to feel like a very long day as well.
Are you able to assist at all as to why Gretchen might have viewed the journey that you took her on as a date, or recall that the two of you kissed, if that didn't in fact happen?
Well, not really, without sort of offering speculative, unhelpful character assassinations. I mean, she was quite a drama queen and enjoyed the attention, as she, to be fair to her, alludes to, and was the subject of plenty of male attention, and seemed to court it and be quite happy with it. So, beyond that, I've got no explanation other than it being a mistake.
Were you ever in any circumstances with Gretchen in which she might have mistakenly thought that the two of you had kissed? So any close physical contact which might lead to a mistake?
No, I'm clutching at straws here. But all I can offer in support of my version is I don't recall anyone else ever commenting on this, or even alluding to it.
Sorry, why do you say that, HM1? Can you just explain?
No, I mean I don't. So in everything that we've discussed, which is quite a lot, this has not come up until Gretchen decided to serve her witness statement, so that's fine. But it does stand alone as a story which hasn't surfaced in any other part of our discussions up until now, as to someone that I might have been involved with.
All right. So I'm going to move on to a different topic, but there is a risk of a breach of a reporting restriction when I do so in terms of the documents that I'm going to. So I've been asked to suggest that the YouTube feed is taken down to avoid any breach.
That, that would seem to me to be prudent. Yes.
Could we have on the screen your witness statement, please? Page 37, starting paragraph 91. I just want to ask you about a few things you said in that statement, HM1, regarding the relationships between the undercover officers and the managers in the SDS. So you said at paragraph 91, all the UCOs had a good relationship with a member of the back office staff. There were some natural pairings and others that were not so natural, but which each party appreciated the value of. The office had a good handle on what was going on with officers' private lives and how their operations were going. Does that reflect your own personal experience of relationships with the back office staff?
Yes.
And to what extent do you feel able to comment on the relationships that other UCOs had with the back office staff?
Well, I guess we'd have to go through them. But generally, I think that generally that statement held true for everyone. And it relied really on, transparency, visibility, mutual problem solving, sharing of the challenges. It was, in that sense, an intimate, collaborative and mutually supporting outfit, recognising that outside of that world, no one would have a clue of what anyone was talking about.
Right. Could we look at the next paragraph in your statement, please? Paragraph 92. You describe support networks were both horizontal and vertical. These support arrangements were flexible, not imposed from above. Office staff sometimes directed us toward particular fellow UCOs, but the unit overall kept tabs on most things, one way or another. The unit and office was sufficiently sophisticated that almost anything would have come to light. Could I ask you to expand a little on the basis for your assertion that the unit and office was sufficiently sophisticated that almost anything would have come to light?
Yeah, I think sort of sophisticated with a small s. I go back to that sort of, we met often. There was the need to communicate regularly. There were the pastoral element and the collaborativeness and nature of collaboration and sort of general conviviality at the twice weekly meetings. Was such that across the machine its entirety, so office and field officers, I'd say that it was understood what was going on, what the problems were, what the challenges were, and the back office staff or the office staff would talk. I'm absolutely certain. Well, this was the case about the risks for individuals, the risk cumulatively. This was a part of the office had vicarious liability for everyone, so they needed to know what they were sitting on, as it were, as well as wanting to get sort of involved in helping us all solve our own problems.
And then can we look also, please, at paragraph 93 of your witness statement that starts at the bottom of that page. You say, as to the topics that were discussed between UCOs, this could be anything. It could be home life, coming under suspicion, being asked to do something you felt uncomfortable doing, feeling there was some issue that the office would not understand, feeling stressed. These were deeply personal matters that one could seek some understanding about only by having these conversations. And so allowing for what you've described earlier about some natural pairings and some less natural pairings, would you say that there was generally a high level of information sharing as between officers, undercover officers, when it came to these sorts of issues?
Yes, I would, but I mean, like in all walks of life, there's natural sort of gravitational pull to certain combinations that we all make a judgment on, that we feel more comfortable with than there might be for others. But cumulatively, the product of all of those discussions, I would say, was shared and became known about.
And then at the end of that paragraph, you say this: there were no issues off limits with management, but sometimes it was more useful to talk to another person in a similar odd situation. So can I break that down? When you say there were no issues off limits with management, do you mean that you considered yourself able to speak to management, in theory at least, about any aspect of your deployment?
Well, I not only felt that, I did.
And so, for example, your relationship with Miss Fuller, that wasn't considered by you to be off limits for discussion with management?
No, it absolutely wasn't. And when we were talking about that, I made it quite clear that that was absolutely known to them.
And reporting back when you were arrested, you didn't feel like you were discussing something that was off limits or that you might be sanctioned for. You felt able to approach your managers?
Well, not only able to, wanted to as soon as I could.
And likewise, when you were asked to give evidence as a witness for the defence in proceedings, was that something you felt you could easily approach your managers about?
In my case, yes.
In terms of what you say there, sometimes it was more useful to talk to another person in a similar odd situation then. Is that simply indicating that sometimes you might have a preference for talking to a fellow undercover officer rather than not being able to talk to your managers about issues?
No, it wasn't distinguished between those two as two groups. It was more the sort of the human nature of picking who one placed one's, if you like, confidence in, with the understanding you were looking for and what you were talking about.
All right. Paragraph 94 of your statement, please. We can see it on the page. Oh. Thank you. You say among most UCOs there was profound trust in the office. The prevailing view was that problems would be taken care of by managers. Presumably that represents certainly your view of management. Is that fair?
Yes.
To what extent do you feel that you're able to speak on behalf of most of the UCOs that you served alongside?
Well, I'd say in most cases that was true. I mean, whether it was by necessity a leap of faith, or one that it was a leap of faith that was made voluntarily, but it was really the only place to go in that respect. So anyone that had problems in that respect was really going to have quite a tricky time of it, and most of us didn't in that respect.
All right. Can I ask you about one particular example? Peter Francis, who served in part at the same time as you, was he somebody who you regarded as having profound trust in the office?
Well, he profoundly didn't have trust in the office, I don't think.
And that was clear to you at the time?
Yes.
Were you able, based on any observations, to form a view on why he didn't trust the office?
Well, most people had a view on this one. He was quite angry most of the time. I sensed, I don't know, a perception that he wasn't viewed, perhaps with the same degree of respect and appreciation by the office as others might have been. So you're asking me for my view, perception. The overriding memory of this officer was just one in a sort of permanently angry mode.
All right. And can I just clarify what you said a moment ago in terms of the perception that he perhaps wasn't as valued as others by the management? Are you suggesting you thought that was his perception, or that there was some truth in that?
No, it was very much his perception. I think he saw, to his mind, more interest in those working in other fields that sort of were more sort of, I guess, headline grabbing, even in the public space, never mind within SDS circles.
Would you see any truth in a suggestion that he was not well supported by the SDS managers in your experience of the situation?
No, that really isn't my view. As far as I was concerned, I wasn't part of it, but would have come through the same sort of selection process of discussion as to his appetite for doing this type of work and motivation and suitability. I think some are asking questions about that process now. But in terms of support for and his rejection of it, it was my view that I think he didn't repay kindness with kindness, to put it softly.
Could I ask you about paragraph 95 of your witness statement, please? And you say this: as in every organisation, in order to manage your staff well, you need to have a number of alliances, overt and covert. There were various of these networks in the SDS. The coverage collectively through these alliances was sufficient for most issues to be known about. Can I ask you, were particular managers in your time, so just to go through them, when you started, it was DI HN67. If you need to check the cipher list, please do.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Yes.
And Detective Chief Inspector HN86 when you started. And they were replaced respectively during your deployment by Detective Inspector Lambert and Detective Chief Inspector Edmondson. Of those four individuals, did you see them as having particular alliances or networks within the SDS?
No more so than you get generally on squads where sort of the more seniors through time served. It was a sort of more comfortable relationship than the new boys arriving.
In terms of your relationships with them, would you have expressed yourself as in a network, using your terminology from the statement, with, for example, Detective Inspector Lambert? Were you close with him as a manager?
Yes, I was close to him as a manager, and he'd been responsible for my early, if you like, scouting.
And closer to him than you were to Detective Inspector HN67, who was there only at the beginning of your deployment?
Yes.
Could we have a look, please, at the paragraph of your witness statement where you were asked about managers and you address their management? It's page 253, paragraph 541. And can I ask you about HN67? You describe he ran the back office efficiently but would not interfere in deployments. I would not have burdened him with anything too difficult relating to the field. Bob Lambert had my confidence in a way HN67 did not. Bob had a sophisticated approach to problem solving, whereas HN67 came across as nervous and highly strung. We were very different people. And can we also look, with regard to HN67, please, at paragraph 559C on page 267. Thank you. Can we look at that subparagraph C, all three parts? When you gave evidence in January, your answers when I asked you about HN67 were to the effect that you didn't hear of anything about him fathering a child, even close to your time in the SDS, that you heard that through the inquiry. But in your witness statement, you said this: I heard rumours that HN67 had had a relationship with an activist and or fathered a child in his undercover identity, and that this had affected him badly. I believe that I heard these rumours whilst I was on the SDS, but I do not know at what stage this was or who told me. I never discussed the rumours with HN67. Can you clarify, is your witness statement accurate when it states that you believe you heard rumours about HN67?
There must be no disclosure or publication made of the information stated during the hearing between 4:29 and 4:32, both minutes inclusive.
Thank you. Could we go back, please, to the witness statement of HM1, now page 262, please. Paragraph 552. And can I ask you about what you say in this paragraph about halfway or a third of the way in, please? You say this, with benefit of hindsight, I would say that there was only one style of management and it was very masculine, which may have meant that people tended to keep a stiff upper lip rather than showing vulnerability. Although I did not think it at the time, I now think that a more diverse management team may have helped with welfare and stress management. Could I ask you to expand, please, on what you meant by the management style being very masculine?
Well, I guess a symptom, the world's moved on and has learnt about, stronger teams being rather better than what was around at that time. So by definition, it was, certainly throughout my time, it was all male. And most of the field was all male. So with that came, to my sense, a style that with, and I'm not just saying this from a 21st century agenda, with more diversity, could have allowed for more confidence in the listening ear approach. So it was, despite the fact, Keith Edmondson, in the way described, was, a soft, empathetic, had people's confidence. It was just, I think my comment there is with reference to how it could have been better.
Was there any sense when you described it as masculine, as the management style, just focusing on the managers, failing to have regard, for example, to, in the case of relationships with women, the autonomy and agency of the women involved, or failing to look out for the women in those situations?
No, I don't think it was any evidence of that at all. I'm not even sure I'd use that term if I was writing that again. It was just a symptom was, it was all male. But it was, I don't know, within that sort of one style, lack of diversity type composition, an environment which could have been improved. And one of the ways which could have been improved is among the management, a bigger range of styles and approaches.
I'm going to move on. Time is a little tight. I'm going to move on to ask you, please, about your knowledge of relationships between other undercover officers and individuals with whom they associated in their undercover identities. Could I ask that we put on the screen, please, MPS 0746347. It's B120, sir, in your bundle. And this HN1 purports to be an individual profile concerning you under an SDS contingency plan. And the first question and answer on the page is, has Detective Sergeant Chitty, so Mike Chitty, seen you since being deployed in the field? And the answer is recorded is yes, once in October 1992. Did you come across Detective Sergeant Chitty when you were deployed undercover?
No, not in the field.
Can you explain if you came across him in other circumstances in October 1992?
No, not at the moment.
Can you think why this document from the time appears to record that you had come across him in October 1992?
Am I allowed to see a bit more of it?
Yes, of course. I'm sorry. If we could just perhaps show HM1 the top half of the document to see if that assists. So it's headed SDS Contingency Plan, Individual Profile, and then this appears. And from context, the inquiry understands that there were some threat assessments carried out by the SDS at a point in time when Detective Sergeant Chitty was undergoing a disciplinary process which ended in his leaving the Metropolitan Police Service.
Okay. Can we go down a bit? Don't recall how I was supposed to help on this. I don't mean now, but even at the time.
It appears to represent a question and answer session with you.
Yeah.
Questions and answers about possibilities that might arise if Mr. Chitty's undercover role came to light. Yeah, so questions: how would Robin Lane react? How do you think the ALF would react to news of his undercover role? But the first question, has he seen you since being... has DS Chitty seen you since being deployed in the field? Your answer was yes, once in October 1992.
Yeah. Are you asking me about that October 1992 meeting?
Yes, it appears to suggest that you met Detective Sergeant Chitty in October 1992, and I'm trying to understand if you did come across him.
Yeah, no, you and me both. Well, I no idea whether that was at his request or whether it was at request of the office. We weren't mates, associates. I think we knew of each other. I had no idea what his relationships were with these individuals mentioned in this report. So I'm struggling on this one a bit.
Were you aware that Mike Chitty had continued or had returned to live in his cover identity years after his deployment in the 1990s?
I became aware of that.
And were you still deployed when you became aware of that?
I believe so. This isn't. I mean, yes. As you can see, I'm struggling on this. I think there was an overlap, certainly.
Did you come across him, so in his undercover identity, whilst you were also deployed undercover?
No, no.
Did you understand that he had a relationship with a woman the inquiry is referring to as Lizzie whilst deployed, and that he had returned to contact with her?
Well, I don't recall knowing that. I'm sure I became aware of it as part of the saga.
Did you know that he appeared to have retained and still to have been using some of his cover identity documents?
As I say, I think this all this was all made known to me, as the whole sort of Chitty saga played out. It wasn't, it didn't play prominently in what I was being asked to do. So that's why I'm sort of being slightly hazy on this. It was clearly, I do remember it clearly being a saga and occupying lots of people's time, not mine.
Right. And this was whilst you were deployed. Who told you? Who made you aware of this? Do you remember? Management, or some other means?
Yeah, no, certainly management. I think it was quite, it was obviously viewed as quite serious. But it was, it wasn't something I had discussions with often at all.
Could I ask you about Andrew Coles, please? You are aware, aren't you, that the inquiry has heard evidence from the woman we are calling Jessica. Please consult the cipher list if you don't know who that is. Her evidence is that she was in a relationship with Andrew Coles in his cover identity for a period in 1992 going through to 1993, so whilst you were deployed. When you were asked in when you gave your witness statement about the extent of your observations of her together with Andrew Coles, you said you couldn't remember her face and you didn't know if you ever saw them together. Since then, the inquiry has shown you photographs that Jessica provided to the inquiry of her in 1993, so her appearance at about that time. Does that jog your memory at all as to whether you saw her together with Andrew Coles?
I don't recall seeing them together, but you know, our sort of paths and being present in each other's company wasn't that frequent.
But on occasion, did your path cross with the paths of Andrew Coles and Jessica?
It's not a standout for me, no.
Whether or not it stood out, did your path cross with the paths of Andrew Coles and Jessica?
Well, I think at some of the big demonstrations, we would have all been there in the mix. But I don't recall any association, even under those circumstances, of them being together. But it was, let's say, that was a pretty distant world, so I wouldn't have probably spotted it even if they were.
You also said in your witness statement, I knew he was close to her, but I did not know they were anything other than friends. How did you come to know that Andrew Coles was close to Jessica?
Well, I think presumably he was reporting on her.
How would you have known that at the time?
Well, through discussion and among the group as to what we collectively knew as an organisation when being asked about individuals.
The group of undercover officers, you mean?
Yes, yes.
Do you recall him discussing her at meetings?
Not specifically, no. But then I don't recall him specifically talking about anyone in particular, apart from a couple of close associates who weren't women.
So what was the basis for saying that you knew he was close to her?
Well, on the occasions that she came up as a named individual on a demonstration or at an event, it was clear that he was able to answer those questions.
What questions?
Well, was this person present? That sort of the sort of thing I was doing with others, but it wasn't. I say this is as close as I can get to any knowledge of his association friendship.
Did you hear anything at all from Mr. Coles or from anyone else that gave you any indication that the two of them were more than friends?
I didn't know.
At any stage before
No.
this inquiry?
No, I don't think so.
Are you aware of any information at all which could assist the chairman in determining whether Jessica's evidence is truthful when she says that she was in a relationship with Mr. Coles, or whether Mr. Coles is being truthful when he says that they were not?
I'm unable to comment on either.
Not aware of any detail from mixing in some of the same groups and with some of the same individuals that might assist?
Not with regards to these two individuals, no.
In the first half of 1992, when your deployment was commencing, did you attend with some regularity meetings of the London Boots Action Group?
Yes.
And at some of those meetings, at least, Mr. Coles was also present, wasn't he?
Yes.
And Jessica was also present on occasion, wasn't she?
I believe so.
Mr. Coles's evidence is that he drove people back to her East London address after meetings. Do you remember him doing that?
No, I mean, I don't remember him specifically driving named individuals. We would have gone our separate ways.
Do you remember seeing him with Jessica at those meetings of the London Boots Action Group?
Well, they were quite relatively small groups. So yes, I mean, remember seeing them there, in as much as I remember seeing any other two individuals there.
You mixed in the same circles with Mr. Coles to the extent that you consider he would have seen you together with Liz Fuller, is that right?
Yes.
Are you quite sure you didn't see him together with Jessica?
I didn't, in this sense. Look, I'd be more than happy to have said if I did. I just didn't.
Could I ask you about some officers whose deployments will be considered by Tranche 3 of this inquiry, please? HN 26, you overlapped together, deployed into the animal rights field. The inquiry has heard some evidence that she formed a relationship with an activist referred to sometimes by the name Thomas Frampton and sometimes by the nickname Joe, in the reporting Joe Tex, although we've been told that should be Tax, by activists who knew him. Were you aware of her relationship beyond a friendship with Thomas Frampton or Joe Tex or Tax?
Became aware of it.
During your deployment?
So certainly the friendship and close association was widely known about.
And what about the fact that it was an intimate relationship?
I wasn't aware of that specifically at the time of my deployment.
And afterwards?
Well, afterwards it became known.
And when you say it became known, do you mean amongst other undercover officers, by management?
Well, I think by everyone.
Everyone within the SDS?
Yes, it all got a bit difficult, didn't it?
What do you mean by that?
Well, how much am I allowed to talk about this?
Well, did you know, for example, that there came a time when the management team discovered that she was in a relationship with him?
I don't know when they became aware. I was fairly certain that most of sort of the story at this stage broke after I'd moved on.
So you leave the field at the end of 1996. How long afterwards, as far as you can recall, were management aware that she was in a relationship?
I don't know. I don't know as to of when they became aware.
Sorry.
No, we didn't discuss it personally, the two of us, while I was in the field.
Right. And any doubt in your mind as to whether or not she was in a relationship with this individual during the course of her own deployment? So the relationship commenced while she was deployed.
So all I saw was a close friendship, close association, which she didn't shy away from, and to my mind, and I think in the way that she explained it was, he was a useful, if you like, reference, protection, reassurance. To be around in otherwise confrontational circumstances.
Right. The point at which it became known, as you put it, that she was in an intimate relationship with him, was that while she was still deployed undercover?
Well, that didn't become known to me. Sorry, that's not what you asked. I lose track of the exact chronology. It's quite for anyone even on the detail of this, it's quite a complicated story. All I know is during my time when we were both deployed, for me it was only, to my knowledge, a close friendship.
Could we have a look at a document, please? MPS 0247 547. It's B177. It's a file note, HM1, with Bob Lambert's initials at the end, dating from March 1988. I'm going to summarise bits of it in the interests of time, but the first sentence states that Roadbridge, which is a reference to HN26, has identified a London-based ALF cell with potential to commit serious crime. The leader of the cell is Joe Tex. If we skip down, there's a paragraph starting HN1. HN1 reports that Tex was known to have taken part in at least 2 arson attacks on hunt-related targets in the home counties in 94-95. HM1 has been able to discuss Tex's track record with RB Roadbridge at some length. So it appears by 1998 you were in contact with HN26, even though you were no longer deployed. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think I had a sort of mentoring role.
It goes on, in recent weeks, Tex has taken RB into his confidence, and this has opened up a rich seam of intelligence. It has also, of course, placed an increased burden on RB, and she is now committed to her cover role to an unprecedented extent. If we turn over, please, to page 2 of the document. We see 1, 2, 3, the fourth paragraph down. RB has made a significant breakthrough after a long period of frustration. That it comes so soon after the writer's more downbeat assessment of her ability to provide high-grade ALF intelligence is a lesson to him and a tribute to RB's willingness to explore all options. These references to her committing herself to her cover role to an unprecedented extent, making a significant breakthrough, are those euphemisms for knowledge that she had entered into an intimate relationship with Joe Tex or Tax?
I don't know.
Did you know by this time in 1998, when you were in a mentoring role discussing Joe Tex with her, that they were in an intimate relationship?
Can't say for certain.
The document underneath the paragraph on the screen goes on to say that in April, the bottom of the next paragraph, in April she plans to travel with Tex and others to a week-long animal rights gathering in Holland, and this will further enhance her standing. Again, were you aware that she was travelling on week-long trips with Joe Tex?
Don't believe so.
So can't assist as to whether by 1998 it was generally known that she was in a relationship with him?
Well, not to me personally. Yes, whether it's known to others in the field at the time and the management, I don't know. I mean, by that time, I was largely divorced from it.
But your evidence earlier stands, does it? It became known, so it became known widely that she was in that relationship.
Well, yeah, factually that is the case.
Can I ask you, please, about James or Jim Boyling? He has stated in his witness statement to the inquiry, I took this through you, I went through this with you last time, that he was aware of your relationship with Miss Fuller. He has also told the inquiry that you were aware that he was in a relationship with a woman that the inquiry is calling Monica. That relationship took place in 1997. Do you recall becoming aware that Mr. Boyling was in a relationship in 1997?
At some stage I did, I think, because he told me.
Did you form the view that the managers of the SDS were aware that he had formed a relationship with a woman in his undercover identity?
Yeah, I seem to recall that he made it clear that they did know.
So through him telling you, you
Yes.
got the impression that the management knew?
That's my recollection, yes.
Do you know which managers?
No, I don't recall.
Did you ever speak to any of the SDS management about the fact that he had told you he was in a relationship?
No, because he appeared to be having that conversation already with them.
Mark Jenner. Can we have on the screen, please, page 274 of your witness statement, paragraph 559N. And the whole of those 3 subparagraphs, please. You told the inquirer in your witness statement that you were aware of him having a sexual relationship whilst deployed. He was a robust individual and very direct. Subparagraph 2, you did not know who it was that he was in a relationship with. You cannot recall if you thought it was a target or someone else he'd come across in his work. He did not seem concerned about it with me. He spoke about it with the same intonation as his cover job, as part of his life, and there was nothing more to talk about. It was mentioned once or twice at most. I reacted non-judgmentally and let it be subsumed into what he wanted to talk about. Does that represent the extent of your knowledge of Mark Jenner's relationship or relationships?
Yes, it does.
Do you know to what extent that relationship was known about by other undercover officers?
No, but in his very direct way, he made it clear that the office probably knew about it as well.
So from him, you got the impression that the managers of the SDS knew that he was having this relationship?
Yes.
Did he say that to you explicitly, or did you infer it from what he was saying?
I can't remember. It was probably somewhere between the two. His directness was likely to have been as equally clear with someone in the management as he had been with me. He wasn't telling me in confidence or looking for reassurance that if he told me, therefore he told the system.
Did you ever discuss this with managers, that you had learnt that he was having a relationship?
No.
When you say in your witness statement you reacted non-judgmentally, why did you not advise him or guard against a relationship of that nature?
Well, it was a bit too late by then, and this was for him and the office to work through.
Could we have up on the screen, just briefly please, MPS 0527792 at page 4. And just down at paragraph 4.4. This is a document from May 1997, HM1, so after you were out of the field. Touchy subject is a name given to Mr. Jenner. And this is Bob Lambert writing, or certainly signing off. On Friday, the 16th of May, touchy subject met with former field officer Detective Sergeant HM1, with whom he enjoys a close working rapport. Sorry, so it's your B174. Did you enjoy a close working rapport with Mark Jenner in May 1997?
Yeah, we did in general, yeah.
Did you learn any more detail about the nature of the relationship he had whilst undercover? So, for example, did you learn that he came to live together with the person he was in the relationship with?
At some stage I came to know that, yes.
And as far as you can assist, to the best of your ability, did the SDS management seem to know that he was living together with a woman in a relationship?
Yes, absolutely. There was nothing he told me that he hadn't already made known. So there was no sort of, please don't tell anyone, and I haven't even told them yet myself. It was never, I think, that wouldn't have been a burden he'd have been happy to put on me.
Could we have on the screen, please, MPS 0727448? It's the notes from your conversation with Operation Hearn in 2014. So it's A2 in your bundle. Can we turn, please, to page 9? And the section on Mark Jenner, under the heading Mark Jenner, please. When you spoke to Operation Hearn, they recorded that you said this: I was not really aware of Mark's deployment or relationship as our worlds did not merge. He was a good guy as hard as nails. I have subsequently become aware of the issue through the media. Based on the evidence you've just given, that's not accurate, is it?
Well, so not really aware. I mean, sort of technically doesn't exclude a bit of knowledge of it, but it wasn't something that we spoke about.
You were aware that he was living together with a woman in a relationship. That's awareness, isn't it?
Yeah, but it was something the office already knew about. We didn't talk about it, so not aware of the detail, the circumstances. But yeah, that's
I have subsequently become aware of the issue through the media gives the impression that that's where your source of knowledge has come from, doesn't it?
yes.
And that's not accurate, is it? Your source of knowledge was directly from Mark Jenner.
Yeah, it became. Yeah, I mean, there's more to those two lines. Absolutely.
Were you attempting to obscure the reality when you spoke to Operation Hearn?
No, not in the slightest. It was just through scant knowledge of the detail, that sort of semi-aware that this was going on because he'd mentioned it, but the office was aware, so it was not something I was remotely concerned with or involved with.
Why couldn't you tell Operation Hearn what you've told us today, that you knew he was in a relationship, that he told you, and that you knew that they were living together?
Well, I don't know if I did know that they were living together at that stage. All I was aware of, but not the detail of, was him being in a relationship with someone.
As I understood your evidence a few moments ago, you did know that he was living together with the woman, and you knew that the management of the SDS knew. So it gave the impression your knowledge of them living together was contemporaneous with the life of Mr. Jenner's deployment.
Yeah.
So you did know in 2014 when you spoke to Operation Hearn, didn't you?
I don't know specifically what I knew then, which I subsequently learned, but yeah, I accept that those two sentences could have been elaborated on, but that's nothing. I can't add anything to that.
Were you trying not to get your fellow officer Mark Jenner into trouble?
This was nothing to do with me. So, go and speak to Mark Jenner, sort of thing. You're asking me about me, not you, sorry, but during the home. I've got enough on my plate that you're asking me about. I've got scant knowledge of this. Speak to him, sort of demeanour.
Right. James Thompson, you mentored him, didn't you?
Yes.
What did you know of his cover employment? Did you know he worked in the film industry?
Yes.
Was there ever any suggestion that he was spending too much time on his cover employment and not enough time on his undercover deployment?
I didn't have any monitoring or involvement in paying attention to that aspect of his operation. I had no view on that. That's what I'm saying.
Okay. Did it come to your attention that others took the view that he may have been spending more time on his cover employment than on his deployment?
So at some stage it came to my attention that all was not as it appeared.
Were you aware of him entering into relationships whilst in his cover identity?
Not at the time we overlapped.
What about subsequently whilst he remained on the SDS?
Can't remember the chronology, but yes, this was someone else that became part of a story.
Sorry, what do you mean someone else who became part of the story? Did you know whilst he was still deployed that he was entering into relationships in his cover identity, intimate relationships?
I don't think I did while he was deployed, no.
If we have a look, please, at MPS 0719 806, your B181, sir. This is dated the 29th of May 2002, signed off by Detective Inspector HM58. Please consult the cipher list if you want to know who that is.
Okay, thank you. Yes.
Right, and it is recording a meeting between you and HM58 to discuss Magenta Triangle's current situation. Magenta Triangle refers to Mr. Thompson.
Yes.
And I want to ask you in particular about, sorry, one moment. Yes, the fourth paragraph beginning MT also told him. So this is you reporting back to HM58 that Mr. Thompson also told you that he believed that most of the current suspicions about his operation stemmed from SDS management disapproval of field officers becoming involved in romantic relationships during the course of their operation. According to HM1, Mr. Thompson did not go into any more detail. Was it not clear to you from the conversation that you had in 2002 with Mr. Thompson that he was engaging in romantic relationships during the course of his deployment?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think it was, that appeared to be the case, yes.
When you gave your witness statement to the inquiry, you said that you were not aware of him having relationships. Should we disregard that in favour of your answer just now?
I just can't remember the chronology of when I became aware. I mean, the unhappy ending for this officer is far more involved than just this particular thread.
Just trying to get at the state of knowledge and the timing. Do you agree that it seems, in fact, by 2002 you were aware and the SDS management were aware that he was involving himself in romantic relationships during his deployment?
It's quite possible, yes.
You heard also, did you, of an attempt by him to obtain cover identity documents without authorization?
Yes.
Did you know about his use of those documents to facilitate travel abroad?
Yeah, I believe so, yeah.
And did you know that at the time that it was happening or subsequently?
No, subsequently.
And how much later? Before the inquiry commenced?
I can't remember the timings. This was when it was clear that he was in a big mess, and I was offered go and speak to him, see how he is, and where is he. There was something to do with, it's sketchy here, something to do with where he was in the process that he either wasn't cooperating with, stroke concerns for his welfare.
So during the course of his deployment coming to an end, would that be a fair way to identify the point in time when you became aware?
Yeah, it could well be. Yeah, it could well be. Yeah.
And again, are you able to assist as to whether the SDS management team knew about his obtaining of cover identity documents and his attempts to use them or his use of them at the time that you became aware?
Yeah, I mean, it appeared to me they were all over it, and that he was in a serious bit of bother.
Can I ask you, whilst we're on this document, HM58 has recorded, sorry, the bit that was on the screen, can we keep that, please? I reassured HM1 that this aspect did not form any part of our suspicions about his operation. So that seems to be HM58 recording that they were not suspicious about romantic relationships. Does that accord with how you understood the situation?
Well, this is HM58.
Yeah. But was
What he said to me, yes?
it wasn't what he said to you, sorry, is that right?
Yes, that's what he's reporting he said to me, yes, looking at this. The I
Yes.
here,
Yes, I is
Yeah.
HM58 reassuring you that this aspect, i.e. involvement in romantic relationships, did not form part of the suspicions about...
yeah, well, I guess he was reading this, he's assuring me on behalf of MT.
But your understanding, if I've not misunderstood your evidence, your understanding was that the management were aware of Mr. Thompson involving himself in romantic relationships.
Yes, yeah. Look, at this stage, this was just one of many issues that he needed to be concerned about. I mean, it's almost the least of the most problematic in the hierarchy of the problems that he now appeared to be confronted with.
But nonetheless one that the management appeared to you to be aware of.
Yes.
HM58 goes on to say, I also reminded him, appears to be a reference to you, that it has been made crystal clear to generations of SDS field officers, and continues to be so, that romantic/sexual relationships with wearies are to be avoided at all costs. In your witness statement, you say it had not been made crystal clear to you. Is that your evidence?
Yes, that is my evidence, yes.
And are you able to assist as to whether the individuals who you had contact with or mentored, HN26, Jim Boyling, Mark Jenner, James Thompson, whether, as far as you could tell, it had been made crystal clear to them that such relationships were to be avoided at all costs? Or did you get the impression that it wasn't regarded in that way?
Well, no, as a statement of common sense, I mean, that's absolutely true. They are to be avoided at all costs. I mean, don't think anyone contested that.
But 4 officers who deployed within the 1990s and with whom you had contact had all apparently entered into relationships. So do you consider that the message was getting through?
Well, 4 as a percentage of the total throughput of officers is a small percentage, and each one of those stories, by the way, is totally different.
It doesn't appear, does it, that they were avoiding relationships at all costs?
No, but the statement that they are to be avoided at all costs is a good starting line.
But not one that was being followed on the face of it?
Well, by the vast majority, it was.
You mention in your witness statement, I'll just touch upon it briefly, that there was a Christmas party for the SDS to which partners were invited.
Yes.
And did you attend with your wife whilst you were part of the SDS?
Yes.
And likewise, did other undercover officers generally attend with their spouses or their partners?
Yes.
Was there any awkwardness in attending those parties, given the level of knowledge that there appears to have been about you and some of your fellow officers engaging in relationships in your cover identities?
No, not during my time.
Any concern on your part that a colleague, an aware colleague, might mention something to your wife in that regard?
No.
Was it generally accepted that you wouldn't tell tales on each other, if I can put it that way, when it came to these relationships?
Well, it would have been an odd thing to have done in a sort of fairly convivial annual event. People had all year to do that sort of thing if they wanted to do that.
So I'm reaching what would be the final section of my questioning. I can either continue, but I'm being told that I ought to pull up within the next 10 minutes to ensure there's time for a Rule 10 process. So I wonder whether it might make sense to deal with that now, and then I can hopefully incorporate into the last section.
Whichever course you prefer to do.
I think that might be sensible given the hour.
And how long is required for the Rule 10 process?
Yeah, I think 20 minutes, sir.
Yes, very well.
Thank you.